Hey, welcome back to Triathlon Mobility Daily. Today we're going to focus on our anterior hips, so that's the front and maybe into the side of the hips, and then also extending down into our quads. So really trying to open up and get some good hip extension in, especially as in your pedal stroke you're going to spend a lot of time in hip flexion and you're not going to take that hip through full range. So important that we really tackle this hip extension. First things first, I'm going to use a peanut ball today, but I would suggest using a roller. I don't know where my roller is at the moment, so that's why I'm using the peanut ball. But we're going to start by smashing out the quads. So, position your tool of choice just in the middle of the quad and get enough weight behind that. You can cross over, but you probably won't need to. It's probably going to be enough pressure as it is. And we're just going to work our way up and down the quad, trying to rotate around that point of contact. And then just small little motions back and forth. We're not doing long sweeping motions like that. We're just working on those localized areas, finding that point and then rotating around it. You can start to inhale and just squeeze the quad into the roller, and then exhale, let the muscle relax. So I'm focusing in particular around my rectus femoris, which is a little bit further up the quad, or one of the higher muscles in the quad. And that's because we're going to really start to focus on that hip flexor in the next few mobilizations. Roughly 2 minutes on each side. Spend a little bit longer if you need to. This one is quite intense, so just distribute that weight accordingly. Sometimes you don't actually notice how the muscle is tensed up, and it's only when you really concentrate on just letting it go completely that you feel how tense it actually is against that pressure. Good, I'm just going to get into my right leg now, because that's about as much as I can handle on that left. And you want to constantly just be repositioning where you are on that roller or ball. I find actually as I get towards that lateral side of the quad, that's where I need it most. Don't forget that breathing and how that can just aid in that relaxation of the muscle. Excellent. Okay, coming up from that, placing that to one side, and I'm going to use a band. Now I've attached this to the sofa leg. Ideally you'd attach it a little bit higher because we need it coming from a straight point in front of us. So I'm going to step into the band, bring it right up to my hip, and then just travel backwards so as to generate enough tension on that band. So you see here it's wanting to pull me down a little bit, which is not ideal. If I just crouch down a little bit so I get in the camera. It's wanting to pull me down, but ideally I want it to pull me into this posterior pelvic tilt. Okay, so where my pelvis is just tucking under. Nevertheless, we're going to try and just hold this position for 2 minutes each side. Just going to have a little move around, bring the body back and forward. Have a go at just contracting my glute on that right side. Just seeing how that affects how this hip flexor is stretched out. So what this band is doing is providing a distraction on the joint, and it's where I would just be focusing on these muscles that are around the joint. It's actually causing this joint to just go into anterior rotation. A lot of times you can sort of go forward in that, but it's actually better to just chill back a little bit and just try and rotate under. Just having a go at twisting into it. So what I'm going to do now is just try and come forward so as to get into the hamstring on my left leg. So I'm just trying to come down here. You can even place a hand on the band, get a little bit more tension there. And we're thinking about, again, tucking that pelvis under. This time the band is pulling me down into the floor. I can even just throw a few little pulses in there if I bring my knee away from the floor. Good, travel back up. And we're going to try and just come away from the floor now. And I'm going to squeeze this glute as I hold this split squat position. Come back as we did with that first initial hip flexor stretch. A lot of tension building up there in the quad, so we won't do that for too long. Good, okay, so I'm going to swap sides. I'll just get this right up into my hip. Make sure I'm far back enough so as to actually get some feasible tension on the band. And again, just moving around, tucking under, squeezing my left glute this time. It's good to just explore it from all angles, so I'm not only coming forward in that plane or going straight back, I'm also just twisting the torso, maybe coming back in that way, other way. So just travel forward, bring your body down, place a hand on that band, just to add that pressure, and just pulse in here, squeeze your glute. Before relaxing down into it. And we're just going to come back up onto the toes. Keeping this front knee in line with the ankle. Again, tucking under with the hips, squeezing your left glute. Coming back at the hips as well, all the while holding that tension. Good, and then coming out of that one when you're ready. Alright, so this one, we're going to lie face down on the mat. And we're just going to do a few Kenzie push-ups. So we're just trying to inhale at the bottom. Place your hands either side of your shoulders. Exhale. Okay, so just getting into that lumbar spine. Actively pin those shoulder blades back. Inhale at the bottom, exhale. You may also be able to feel that in the hip flexors as well. Last one. Okay, just come back into child's pose to almost counteract that last one. A little move around. So last one we're going to do, focus actually on mobility, so the strength of the hip. So I'm going to do what's called a controlled articular rotation. Lying face down, arms out, just for a little bit of support. I'm just going to curl my left leg up and trying to keep my hip bone in contact with the floor. I'm going to see how high I can lift my knee. So I've still got contact here, but I'm lifting my knee, squeezing my glute, squeezing my hamstring, and then going to turn out. Still keeping that hip bone in contact till I feel it starts to come away, and then I'm going to come back in reverse. Okay, so let me just shuffle up, lifting up, out. Really tough to get to that end range without wanting to bring the hip off the floor, but keep it strict even if there's relatively little movement. Good, going one more here. So pretty tough. It's going to get your heart rate going and your body temperature risen. So other side, make sure we've got enough space. 90-degree angle or thereabouts, hip bone down, squeezing up, out. If you're getting cramps, then don't worry, absolutely normal. Looking for that knee to go as high as possible without that hip bone coming away. Externally rotate as much as you can, squeeze those glutes. One more. Just going to see the difference between the two. Because usually you'll have one side which is a lot stronger, a lot more dominant, and for me that's the right side. So keep working on those, guys. It's a really great one to improve that overall hip strength and get that joint moving through its full range.